Happy New Year from all of us. Our first program of 2021. It's Moral Side of the News. I'm John Blim with the WHAS Crusade for Children. We're glad you're alongside. With us today, our distinguished panel includes Rabbi Emeritus Stan Miles, Temple Shalom, Reverend Jason Crosby, Crescent Hill Baptist Church, Dr. John Slider, Breckenridge Chapel Free Methodist, and Father John Stoltz, St. Aloysius Catholic Church. Our first topic: the citywide curfew continues in Washington, D.C., following the assault on both the U.S. Capitol and our democratic system this week. None of us could imagine the horrifying mob scene as it unfolded on Wednesday. Thousands of Trump supporters, some carrying Confederate flags, broke windows and breached entrances to the nation's capital. Guards were overwhelmed. Members of Congress fled and hid to stay safe. President Trump is being blamed for, 1, inciting the crowd to violence, and 2, for not calling them to stop. Panelists on Moral Side of the News, where do we begin? Discussing what's being described as insurrection, the fact that there was a lack of preparation and response, a president who stood by and watched without stepping in, and what do we expect to see in the days ahead leading up to what should be a peaceful transition of power? Who'd like to start on our program today?
I just think that it's a situation where I'm very, very sad. I'm shocked, I'm frightened, but I'm not the least bit surprised, because ever since Donald Trump came down on that elevator in, I believe, July of 2015, the invective, the hyperbola, the bombast has been totally nonstop. And he just stimulated those folks to rush the Capitol. It's just there's nothing surprising here. It was going to happen, and tragically it did happen. I applaud the courage of all our members of Congress, all on both sides of the aisle. I especially applaud the courage of the Capitol Police Force, who worked under siege yesterday. And it's tragic that there was a loss of life, but it could have been so much worse. It's almost like we're in the plot of a very odd television miniseries. And I, for one, am ready for the miniseries to be over. I'd like to listen to the news for once and be bored.
I understand, Stan. Last night, and I think this was an important component of the day yesterday, last night there was reassurance in the formality of the process whereby the Electoral College votes were received in Congress. And I think that was an important display after everything that had happened, all the chaos, to demonstrate to the American public that there is significance and importance to what might be considered a rather boring process. But it takes those kinds of mechanisms in order to ensure that there are peaceful transfers of power. So one other word about Trump's culpability is that one thing I think we've all observed is that he does a very good job of articulating and motivating, inciting, without explicitly making statements. We've talked a lot on this program about the ways in which dog whistles have been used by him to stir up racial tension. I think what was different about yesterday, in addition to the drama that was the sieging the Capitol building was what he did at the rally preceding. He didn't have plausible deniability when he concludes that rally by saying, let's go to the Capitol. He said, I'll go with you to the Capitol. Be strong. This is a fraudulent election. This was one time where there's no plausible deniability. Those words came within minutes of the acts that followed.
I'll let John speak here in just a second, but I wanted to, Jason, I heard something. I just wanted to confirm that you were either using an image or actually saying that the president used dog whistles to. Are you? I'm being. There's no dumb questions, just dumb people. So I'm a dumb person here. Is he actually? What's going on? What do you mean by that?
I mean, previously when he's made comments, for instance, after Charlottesville.
Okay.
Good people. Yeah. Good people on both sides. That's an indicator, a communicative signal without explicitly saying, providing cover for others.
Yeah, I thought that was the kind of thing to which you were referring. I was searching my mind for an actual blowing of a dog whistle, and I wasn't trying to be funny. I just, John, I'll get out of your way and let you talk. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's fine. I am saddened by what happened yesterday. I think that the president gave hints and has for a while about what would happen, not exactly in mind, but, you know, I think I remember him saying that if he had lost, there would be revolts and things like that occurred. In some ways, in other words, in some ways, I felt I'm not surprised that this happened, but in some ways, it's still a shocking thing that it occurred. And I think about populism. And that's some of what is going on here is populism, and as opposed to a much more organized or institutional method of politics, and sometimes populism has done some great things, and when a leader blends emotion with the reason and the mission of what this country is to be about, there's something that can happen there with that. But I think sometimes also populism can work to make people do irrational and even immoral things, such as a mob storming the Capitol. That's not the ways of our nation. It's not the ways of our Constitution. It's not the ways that elections are decided. But what happened was a populist leader got some people whipped up into a frenzy. And then this group made a decision to do that. And it was a whole group. It wasn't just an individual, too. And we just have to recognize the danger of that, I think. And nevertheless, in as much as there was a danger there and as much as it was a scary thing, at the end, our democracy, our way of doing things survived. And we continued with our constitutional process last night. And I thought that was a good decision to just continue it last night late into the evening. That particular process. It just says we go on, and nothing is going to deter us from doing things the way that they're supposed to be done.
Yeah, I can pretty much concur with everything. And Jason, I wasn't calling you out on your reference. I just wanted to make clear in my mind what you meant, whether you actual dog whistles or you were speaking in imagery, as a good preacher does. This may surprise you all, but I'm a conservative. Were you all aware of that? And by definition, That means that I value the preservation of established principles and liberties, institutions, customs, symbols, practices, and the order of our nation. I do think it is too early to make any far-reaching conclusions about culpability and causes for this. I like John's reference to populism. I think there's a strong element, has been a strong element since the election of 2016 of populism in our political process. I just, I don't think it would be, and I don't think anybody here said anything irresponsible, but I think the pundits that we're getting are making some far-reaching conclusions about what's going on. And John Blim, I'll let the cat out of the bag if people don't know it. This is the day after we're taping on, or we're recording on Thursday, and all of this happened less than 24 hours ago. So I think to be drawing any conclusions or parallels with other events is really irresponsible, and sounds like excuses are being made. Nobody here has been doing that, but I'm avoiding doing that because I don't want to excuse the mob violence. Nothing excuses mob violence, especially when it's used for influencing our political and legal systems. Nothing excuses mob violence. Mob action is not protected speech. It's illegal, and I consider it immoral. Hopefully everybody's kind of on board with me on that. I believe that those persons who acted illegally should be vigorously pursued and prosecuted, and if found guilty, punished. I don't want to compromise that statement in any way. The other observation I want to make is that in watching replays of this and so on, I was stationed south of DC 40 years ago, several times in my military career. And long time ago, you could go into DC at night, walk into the Capitol, and just kind of randomly walk around. That was shut down for security reasons, but I was shocked at the ease in which people penetrated whatever security there was. I'm not slamming the the rank and file officers, but there's some leadership and planning questions that need to be answered with the security for our federal buildings, especially the Capitol. I'm astounded at how easy it was for persons to get access.
Yeah, I was going to follow up with a question about that. There's been a lot of criticism about the lack of preparation and perhaps response, especially compared to other events that have occurred, protests and riots across our country this year. Your thoughts on that? What do you think happened there?
First of all, on the desk of President Harry Truman of blessed memory, there was a plaque and it said, "The buck stops here." I think that a lot of responsibility goes with the occupant of the Oval Office, and the fact that his behavior stimulated this from happening. This event of counting the votes was just a pro forma thing that no one really much thought about until this year. And when I looked at the people who were storming the Capitol, one particular person really kind of disturbed me. He was wearing a T-shirt, and on the T-shirt were the words Camp Auschwitz. Now, I'm just wondering, is that one of the good people on both sides? I have to wonder that, because when I see something that says Camp Auschwitz, all I can think are 6 million Jews, men, women, and 1.5 million children being put to death. This is a patriot. I cannot believe it. I cannot believe that this is an American patriot doing something like that, wearing that shirt.
Yeah, and John, in addition to that, and to answer your question, what happened yesterday is happening in the context of the Black Lives Matters protests in D.C. and all across the country, Breonna Taylor protests here in Louisville. And so you also have to, unless you're living under a rock or have had your head in the sand, recognize the distinction between the way in which those protests were policed, the preparation. I saw an image yesterday during the Black Lives Matters protest in D.C. where you have the police in full riot gear lining the streets of Washington. And certainly that wasn't the case yesterday. And so it does raise those questions. And those are questions that need to be addressed. But to see white people wearing Camp Auschwitz T-shirts, carrying the Confederate flag, making their way rather easily into the Capitol, and to know what the scenes looked like in D.C. on other occasions when it was a more diverse crowd. Let's just leave it at that was protesting. It raises questions about the ways in which different people with different skin colors are policed.
Well, you did hear my statement, and I don't think that excluded anything that you were saying, Jason. My point was that less than 24 hours after the event, there needs to be some buffer to answer your questions that are valid, and to take in all the information. I'll never forget, and it's helped me in the pastorate as well as in other venues. In a class at the Naval War College, I was taking a course there, and this was my takeaway from the whole course. And the instructor said, the first information is always wrong. And of course, he was speaking about military operations, but the first, the initial information oftentimes is provided to us. I'm not saying here, I'm just saying, well, let me back away from saying what I was starting to say. I just think we need to take some breathing room to answer the valid questions that you raised, Jason. I'm not disagreeing whatsoever. And certainly Stan's experience seeing that T-shirt on TV, I can't necessarily empathize, but sympathize and be as shocked as he is. What groups are represented there? I just think we need a little breathing space to answer those questions. That's all. I was my second response to John's second question was strictly tactical. It was. I don't think that bumps all the way up to the president making tactical decisions on how to defend a building. It just astounded me that there was the ability to make such a breach.
John,
yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, the Senate Majority Leader is responsible for the Capitol Police. So that would have been.
Me. I don't know.
I'm pretty sure that's the case. So
okay.
So we at least know who we can direct some of these questions to.
Yeah. Well, I'm not. Well, see, and here I'm starting to make excuses. I don't want to do that. If Senator McConnell is responsible, then he should be held responsible. I doubt that he is making specific, uninformed, tactical decisions about what officer to put at what door. So all I'm saying is let's take a breath, and we got through it. I think we were all celebrating that, and there is a transition, or there will be. So
I think initially I just come up with a surprise, and that is that I think it was known a few days before that these that what were called protests, or the preparation for protests, would happen, and that the news reports just seemed to say that the Capitol, that there just wasn't the preparation there to secure the Capitol, knowing that these protests were going to occur. And all I am left with is just a sense of surprise around that. Also knowing that our legislators, representatives and senators, would be there on that particular day certifying the election. I mean, putting all those things together, I just am left with surprise that the Capitol building was not more secure than it was, So.
Yeah, and I'm probably not giving any cues to anybody, any group, but if I were a terrorist leader, had a group, and was planning something outrageous, I would certainly be studying the tapes of what occurred yesterday. I'm still baffled at the lack of preparation.
So as we move along, just a couple of weeks left in the Trump presidency, how do you see and what do you expect in a peaceful transition of power?
I think the first thing is that the current administration should make available to the incoming administration the information from the Department of Defense and the State Department, which I believe heretofore hasn't been available to their transition team. That's just normal courtesy that every single other administration has done throughout the years. And we're looking at what, 13 more days, or when we televise 10 or 11 more days. That's not very much time. The things that were normal behavior need to be affected immediately. And the things that were normal behavior before this transition need to be in place for the next transition, and the transition after that, and the transition after that.
I honestly think if we're going to have a peaceful transition under these circumstances, either the vice president and the cabinet should evoke the 25th Amendment and he should be relieved of his duties because he's unfit for office, or as Senator Schumer announced this morning, as members of Congress are in the midst of doing right now, the articles of impeachment should be drawn up, brought to the House floor, and conviction should occur. There is no reason, based upon what we have seen over the course of the past 4+ years, based upon the video he released yesterday, in which he said, "I love you," to those who besieged the Capitol and caused that death and destruction. And he continued to perpetuate the lies about the election being stolen. There is no, and to see what's happened this morning, Thursday morning again, with the number of people, trusted advisors, that are leaving the White House. I don't think why should we think at this point he's going to go quietly into the night? And so I really, unfortunately, I don't like saying that. I wish circumstances were different. But I think there are still turbulent days ahead as long as he is an occupant in the Oval Office.
What do you actually all think that the possibilities are of enacting the 25th Amendment? Do you think zero chance, John says? What else? Why, John?
I don't think this is covered in the 25th Amendment, just a political difference, for lack of a better term. But then again, I'll stand by my initial statement that I think it's irresponsible to start making these evaluations less than 24 hours after an event.
Well, I think that the one thing is that the public here now. I'm speaking of populism, as much as I critiqued it earlier on, and that is that citizens, I think, need to demand a peaceful transition of power. We can't just look back passively to it. It needs to be a demand to our legislators that this happens in our government. So I'm with that. One of the things that I heard about the 25th Amendment is that for the cabinet, so many of the secretaries are acting secretaries. They are not. What will be the title of someone who has that office?
Confirmed. The confirmed.
Confirmed. Yeah. They're acting. They're acting. Yeah. As to there are questions as to whether or not the 25th Amendment could actually happen because of the number of acting secretaries that are present now in the government's the president's cabinet.
All right. Any other thoughts? We have a couple minutes left on the end of the Trump presidency and welcoming in, I guess, President Biden and Vice President Harris. Your final thoughts. We've got about a minute and a half.
Well, just quickly go ahead, Stan. Go ahead.
No, you go first this time, Jason. Go for
it. I was just quickly going to follow up to say, also this morning, Facebook, Instagram suspended Trump indefinitely. So we have a situation where the president's banned from social media, but he still has access to the nuclear codes. That's troubling.
And I would suggest it's troubling too, and I'm not speaking of President Trump, and I understand their reasons, for private entities to decide that a person should be, that are purporting to be media. That just is very chilling to me. I understand the reasons, and I understand why, Jason, why you agree with that. I'm not disagreeing. I'm very concerned about our liberties being assaulted from all directions.
We can talk more about regulation of big tech at a later date.
You think so?
Well, we had all kinds of plans.
At least we all ended up this conversation still friends, so that's good.
We all had plans to talk about other things in this program, but we had one topic, and that'll do it for this edition of Moral Side of the News. And I thank our panel, Stan Miles, Jason Crosby, John Slider, and John Stoltz. And maybe we'll talk about big tech and high tech next week. But until then, we'll be back next week with another edition of Moral Side of the News. So please be safe, stay well, and we'll see you next time. Thank you, panel.